Hi, welcome to the UPM Book Club. Today we are beginning Seize the Time by Bobby Seale. We're going to start at the first section here, Growing Up Before the Party. Who I am. Malcolm X was killed in 1965. I ran down the street. I went to my mother's house and I got 6 loose red bricks from the garden. I got to the corner and broke the motherfuckers in half. I wanted to have the most shots that I could have. This very same day Malcolm was killed. Every time I saw a patty roll by in a car, I picked up one of the half bricks and threw it at the motherfuckers. I threw about half the bricks and then I cried like a baby. I was righteously crying. I was pissed off and mad. Every patty I'd see, whop, I'd throw a brick and it would hit the cars and zoom. They're driving down the street and I'm throwing bricks for a motherfucker. I thought that was all I could do. I was ready to die that day. Kenny Freeman and the rest of the cultural nationalists came down there to get me, and I told them to leave me alone. I said, "Get away, you N-words are crazy." I got mad and busted a window in the house. I put my fist through a window. I told them all, fuck it, I'll make my own self into a motherfucking Malcolm X. And if they want to kill me, they'll have to kill me. That was a big change with me. They never understood that. Eldridge says Malcolm X had an impact on everybody like that, and Malcolm X had that impact on me. When my wife Artie had a baby boy, I said, that N-word's name is Malik Nkrumah Stagoli Seale. I don't want him named that, Artie said. I had read all that book history about Stagoli, the Black folkloric history, because I was hung up on that stuff at the time. So I said, Malik Nkrumah Stagoli Seale. Why Stagoli, Artie asks. Because Stagoli was a bad N-word off the block and didn't take shit from nobody. All you had to do was organize him like Malcolm X, make him politically conscious. All we have to do is organize a state like Nkrumah attempted to do. Nkrumah was a bad motherfucker and Malcolm X was a bad N-word. Just a heads up, Bobby says the N-word a lot in this book. A lot. A lot. I wish I had a little beeper button to just be like, boop, radio edit for every time he says that, but I don't. So, Huey P. Newton showed me the N-word on the block was 10 motherfuckers when politically educated, and if you got them organized. I said Stagoli, put Stagoli on his name, because Stagoli was an unorganized N-word to me, like a black brother on the block. I related to Huey P. Newton because Huey was fighting N-words on the block. Huey was an N-word that came along and he incorporated Malcolm X. He incorporated Stagoli. He incorporated Nkrumah, all of them. The N-word out of prison knows, Huey used to say. The N-word out of prison has seen the man naked and cold, and the N-word out of prison, if he's got himself together, will come out just like Malcolm X came out of prison. You never have to worry about him. Hell, go with you. That's what Huey related to. And I said, Malik for Malcolm, and Nkrumah Stagoli Seale. I was born in Dallas, Texas, October 22nd, 1936. I grew up with a brother, a sister, and a cousin who lived with us named Alvin Turner. He was the son of my mother's identical twin. Off and on, I learned things like everybody else learned things. I'm no different from other people growing up and living and learning. I was raised up like the average black man, like a brother in the black community. A lot of things affected me in a way that caused me to see things. Huey was the most significant, but a lot of things in the past affected me before Huey molded my attitude. Unjust things that happened. The farthest back I can remember is when I was unjustly whopped by my father. I can never forget that. My father and mother were having an argument. I was supposed to be washing some shirts in the backyard of a house we had in San Antonio. I was the oldest of 3 children and was about 6 years old. I remember very vividly that I was playing in the back and how my father told me to get the wash basin, put some water in it, and wash his shirt. I tried to wash his shirt, but then I guess I started playing. He was arguing with my mother, and it had something to do with that shirt. My father came outside and was mad at me because I hadn't finished the shirt. He took his belt off and really beat me. He went back inside the house and argued again with my mother. I was crying. When he came back and beat me again, my mother came out and stopped him and snatched the strap away, but he got it back from her and argued with her. Then he pushed her and beat me again. He told me to wash that shirt. I never forgot that beating. I never had because it was an unjust beating. The argument he was having with my mother was directly related to him taking it out on me, and it wasn't right. My father was a carpenter in Port Arthur, Texas. My mother had left him a couple of times, and one time when they got back together, he built a house up from the ground. My father was a master carpenter. That's where I learned my carpentry work. Excuse me. I learned drafting in school, but I knew basic building structure from being around my father. He taught it to me and my brother off and on while we were growing up. I grew up just like any other brother. We didn't always have money. During the war, we had a little money, but after my father built the house, he went to San Antonio, and then we were back in poverty again. It was still wartime and there was some money around, but I remember that whenever my mother and father rented a house, they would rent half out to some other people, a whole family. I think the first time I really began to oppose things that I saw was when we were at Cordonice's village. I don't know how to pronounce that. The government housing project in Berkeley. People were living in poverty and semi-poverty. We lived in very crowded conditions with my mother's twin sister and her son. The place was always dirty. My mother always tried to save money, but the money was used up every time my father was laid off. He wasn't able to get in the union at that time. Later, he and 3 other guys were the only black cats in the carpenters union in all of California. Does anybody else want to take a turn? Comrade Shay, you've been MIA for a second with your travels and stuff. Would you like to take a turn reading? Comrade Shay still with us? Oh, looks like we're missing him. Anybody else want to read a couple of pages?
I will read a couple paragraphs, but in a bit I have to go. So, I'll say when I can no longer read. So where do we start again?
Right here at the top of the page.
Gotcha. We lived in poverty mostly because of my father's 8th grade education. His father used to be rough on him. My father was a lot rougher on me in certain periods of my life, just like his father was rough on him. His father used to beat him, and one day my father left and wouldn't work for his father anymore. I pulled the same thing. One day I stopped and I wouldn't work for my father anymore because he wouldn't pay me. At that time I didn't know what the word exploitation meant, but that's exactly what it was, and I rejected it and opposed it. My mother never really had any money. When I was 13, I used to make money on my own, hauling groceries and cutting lawns. It wasn't always profitable, but sometimes I could make $1 or 2 here and there. Me and a couple of brothers I used to run around with. I ran around with a couple of gangs in my younger days when I was 14, 15, and 16. Another cousin who was already growing during World War II stay with us came to stay with us in Port Arthur, Texas, and that's when I first really learned about sex. Through a knot hole, I saw my cousin making love with his wife. Okay. My sister and brother and me were all together in this little closet. There was no inner wall section to the inside of the closet, and we just happened to be in there playing one day while he was making love with his wife. He was in the army and he wasn't getting ready to go to war. We saw them through the hole. That was my first time understanding of sex. We called sex peeping because we were peeping through a hole. My mother didn't know what was going on, but she said, "What are y'all peeping at in there?" That's where we got the term from. During the war, when my cousin got home on leave, we knew he and his wife were going to be peeping. By the time I turned 16, let me just see. Okay, just want just wanted to check something. There we go. By the time I turned 16, I was more opposed to society and the injustices and bad things in it, but I wasn't very articulate about it. In learning history, I picked up on things that had been done wrong, and I began to find out about the American Indian, how rotten he'd been treated when I met Steve Brumfield. He was about a month younger a month younger than I am, and he's dead now. He killed himself, they say. We're opposed to the white man for taking the land away from the Indians, and we identified with the Indians because our parents had Indian in them. We didn't know about Africa yet. It was very easy for me to identify with Africa when I got to Marriott College. I had gotten rid of the stereotyped notion of American Indians when I was 16 years old. So when the Afro American Association started talking about identifying, it was easy for me to grasp and get rid of the Tarzan notion of Africa. Yep. Before I went to college, when I was in the service, I wasn't aware of civil rights. I've been hearing about civil rights through the papers, but not focusing on it that much. I was personally more concerned with the gettings with them. I was personally more concerned than with getting some kind of education. I go to the library and read a lot, but at the same time, I wasn't trying to get some clothes. I was trying to get some clothes, and I bought a set of encyclopedias. I also begun to play drums. I've gotten myself a $600 set of drums, which I was also making payments on. I made a mistake on overloading myself, and I got behind 3 payments on the drums. I'd bought the drums in Oakland, and they sent a collection agency out after I had missed 2 payments. At the time, in 1958, I was at I was at Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota, and and they and went and they went all the way up there to collect. Also, I gotta go. It's time for me to go back to class, so someone else has to take up reading. But it was fun being here with y'all. I hope y'all have an amazing day, and all revolutionary love and power. Love you guys.
All power,
All
Gabby.
power. All
You.
power.
All power.
Shanti, I see you've got your hand up. You offering to read next?
Yep.
Awesome. Go ahead, sister.
Colonel King, the commanding officer of the squadron, happened to be related to the people who owed the collection agency, and he was threatening to put me in jail if I didn't pay my bills. I had run around the base for 4 months trying to get one of the staff sergeants to co-sign for me to get an allotment that would be automatically taken out of my pay so I could pay off the bill. I wanted to keep my drums because I was engrossed in being a righteous jazz drummer. It was an outlet because you couldn't go anywhere except for the few times we got to go to one of the faraway cities to find a woman or a girlfriend. In the afternoon, I would go with these other cats who were musicians, and we had a righteous group. We practiced and rehearsed, went to a movie or the service club, got a hamburger, came back, and went to bed. One day, Colonel King called me in his office and told me for about the 5th time that he was going to put me in jail if I didn't pay my bill. By that time, I was run down and I wanted my drums. So I told him, Colonel King, I'm trying to get this stuff paid off now. I'm doing everything I know how. He told me to get my ass out of the office and pay the damn bills off. That night, I went downtown and played a gig, and I got my $15. Another cat came around with a pint of whiskey, and I was so pissed off and depressed about this whole situation that I got kind of high. I was supposed to be back at the base by 12, but when I got there, it was 12:30, and the sergeant was waiting. He said he was going to have to report me, and then he left. That pissed me off and depressed me more. One of the cats came in and got me to repair something. I was a sheet metal mechanic. And then he came back again with another piece which I couldn't repair because I didn't have the right kind of extrusions. I tried to fuck around and modify it. He was in such a hurry, he came back and cussing at me. I said, motherfucker, don't be cussing at me. Get your motherfucking ass out of here. I was mad and pissed off, and I didn't want anybody messing with me. So he left. Then I got a call on the bitch box, and the guy said, hey, Seale, what do you mean you're not going to repair this part for this guy over here? The cat had gone all the way over to the dispatch office a block away. I said, I told the motherfucker I couldn't repair the thing because I couldn't find the right kind of extrusion. I'm trying to modify the damn thing, and he's just going to have to wait and stop rushing me. and not be coming over here cussing me. Who in the hell do you think you're cussing? The dispatcher said. You'll get court-martialed for this, boy. You know what? I said, fuck you sons of bitches, and I just ripped the bitch box out of the wall. Then the phone rang, and I grabbed the phone and just ripped the phone out of the wall. I walked outside into the little office and I saw my toolbox, which reminded me that these motherfuckers were trying to charge me for some tools that some punk had stolen out of my box, and I threw the toolbox across the room. Then I took the table and turned it over, and I went back into the office and turned over one of the desks. My partner Rabbit came in, saw what was happening, and knocked me out. He actually knocked me out. He was a partner, and he was really trying to help me. He saw I was pissed off, and he knocked me out, got me into a truck, and took me to the barracks. When I came to, I walked all around the barracks drinking wine, and I wound up in another barracks, passed out. The next morning, Rabbit came in, woke me up, and told me Colonel King wanted to see me. I had already made up my mind that I was going to jail. So when I went in the office, I didn't even salute the bastard. And I thought to myself, he thinks he's a white god or something. You ain't paid those bills yet, huh? He said. And I just looked at him. Well, you better pay them goddamn bills. He picked up this little steel model plane from his desk and was waving that thing in my face and talking about putting me in jail. When he said he put my ass in jail, I blew up and grabbed that model plane. The sergeant walked up behind me, jacked me up, got his arm around my neck, pulled me back, and threw me off balance. Another one came up and got my right arm, and they dragged me outside and pushed me up against the wall. I said, let me alone, and tell Colonel King to let me alone. If you're going to take the drums, take the drums. You don't have to put me in jail. He's trying to get the money for them just because he's working with the monkeys downtown. At that point, they just stepped back and let me go. The sergeant said, you better go on in there and tell him that, but you better be cool. I went back and sat down in a chair and I was just looking at him. I was a distance away from him. He was looking up at me and was writing something up on me. I could see that. This bastard, I said to myself. Now, why in the hell should I sit here and let him mess over me? The sergeant and the other cat had seen me sitting down and had gone in the back. So I just got up and walked right on out of the office. I went over to the barracks and I said to myself, I might as well leave this motherfucker. There's no reason for staying here. I ain't even been AWOL, but they can call it whatever they want to call it. I've been in this damn thing here 3 years and 4 months and I'm getting fucked over again. Later for them. So I proceeded to put on my civilian clothes. The next thing I knew, they had 28 policemen over there grabbing me and handcuffing me. I cussed Colonel King out for what he was. I cussed him all the way down the streets. I had a whole big crowd of cats driving and watching me cuss him out while they were taking me down in front of the barracks and all the way back across the lawn in front of the squadron headquarters. They put me in the truck and I was still cussing him. I cussed him all the way across. Then I blotted them all out. I just forgot about them and they put me in jail. I wouldn't talk to any of them. I wouldn't say anything to anybody. So they said they were going to send me to a psychiatrist. They thought it was crazy. They fooled around for 2.5 months and court-martialed me. King told me that he was giving me my discharge, a bad conduct discharge. And he said to me, you're not going to be able to get a job when you get out of here, Seale. What the hell makes you think there were any jobs out there before I come here? I said, and I laughed at him. Well, he said, you've got 5 minutes to get off this base. What are you going to do with the other 4 minutes and 59 seconds? I said, because it won't take me any time to get away from here. Because the colonel pulled that work thing on me, I decided not to let it oppress me. I worked in every major aircraft plant and aircraft corporation, even those with government contracts. I was a top flight sheet metal mechanic. They would fire me after 2 months when they found out about the bad conduct discharge. Places would hire me right away because they needed me, but 2 months or so later, they'd find out. I worked at Kaiser Aerospace Electronics near Oakland for 6 months. They ran my papers through and came back and said that I lied on my discharge. If I told you the truth, I wouldn't have had a job, I said. Anyway, I'm doing your job. If you want to fire me, fire me. If you don't want to fire me, forget it and I'll do the work. They needed somebody on the night shift out there, and I knew the whole operation. So the engineer decided to squash it, and he left me alone. This was on the Gemini missile project. I was doing non-destructive testing. It involves testing for microscopic cracks in metals by a complicated chemical and magnetic process. It's a neat trade to learn, and I learned it clean. I quit that job 15 months later because the war was going on, and I felt I was aiding the government's operation. I wanted to go to Africa by that time. I was out with the government then, and I had become very hip. When I was working at night, I was going to Merritt College in the day. When I was working in the day, I was going to Merritt at night. When jobs got scarce in 1959, 1960, because of the steel strike, I did some drafting work. I could read a blueprint sideways, any kind of precision blueprint. I wanted to be an engineer when I went to college, but I got shifted right away since I became interested in American Black history and trying to solve some of the problems. During the court martial, they asked me what I thought about the civil rights movement. I hadn't known the significance of their question, but I was stupid and I had read something about the communists, and I said, well, the communists are leading it, ain't they? It's funny the way people learn things, and things affect a person. All of 1959 and half of 1960, I was in Los Angeles. In 1960, I worked as a comedian off and on when I first went to Merritt College. I dropped out for one semester, but I went back in January of 1961, and I met Huey in September of 1962. That year, I worked as a comedian in 2 or 3 clubs around Oakland and at private parties. I think comedians know a hell of a lot. They know a lot of things that are oppressive and wrong. I think that when I met Huey P. Newton, the experience of things I've seen in the Black community, killings that I witnessed, Black people killing each other, and my own experience, just living, trying to make it, trying to do things, came to the surface. It came to the surface when I met Huey Newton at Merritt College. The last 9 years I've been in the struggle in one form or another.
Thank you, Conrad. Is there anybody else who wants to take a turn reading?
I can read.
Awesome. Please and thank you.
I went to the 99-cent store and bought me a pair of glasses just for today. No,
Hell
I've been
yeah.
needing them. Oh, so
Odd.
I meet Huey. Brother Huey P. Newton put the Black Panther Party in motion. Brother Huey, in the Minister of Defense and leader of the Black Panther Party. He is presently a political prisoner, but he is still the philosophical theoretician, the practitioner. He head, director, and top official spokesman for the Black Panther Party. It is impossible to talk about the Black Panther Party without first talking about Huey P. Newton, because Brother Huey put it all into motion. We sometimes talk about the genius, or quote, the genius of Huey P. Newton, unquote. I met Huey P. Newton in the early 60s during the Cuban blockade, where there was numerous street rallies going around Merritt Junior College in West Oakland. One particular day, there was a lot of discussion about Black Panther people on the blockade against Cuba. Were out in the front of the college and in the streets, grouped up in bunches of 200 to 250, what have you. Huey was holding down a crowd of about 250 people, and I was one of the participants. After he held the conversation down to what in those days they called shooting everybody down, that means wrapping off information and throwing facts. People would ask Huey a question or refer to something he said. They tried to shoot Huey down by citing some passages in books concerning the subject matter being discussed, and before they knew it, Huey whipped out a copy of The Black Bourgeoisie by E. Franklin Frazier and showed him what page, what paragraph, and corrected the person. I guess I had the idea that I was supposed to ask questions in college. So, an after brother. Weren't all these civil rights laws the NAACP was trying to get for us, doing us some good? And he shot me down too, just like he shot a whole lot of other people down. He said, it's all a waste of money. Black people don't have anything in the country that is for them. He went on to say that he went on to say that the laws already on the books weren't even serving them in the first place. And what's the use of making more laws when what's needed was to enforce the present laws? So all the money that the people were giving to Martin Luther King and the rest who were supposed to put these laws on the books for Black people was a waste of Black people's money. I was ready to accept that when he started citing many more facts to back up his point of view. Huey always brings out basic practical things. That's the way he talks to you. That's the way he explains things to you. He gets to the point where you can't get around it. So you have to face things. That's the kind of atmosphere I met Huey in, and all the conflicts of this meeting, all the blowing that was going on in the streets that day during the Cuban crisis, I almost have to sneeze. All of what was involved with his association with the Afro-American Association, a lot of arguments came down. A lot of people were discussing with 3 or 4 cats in the Afro-American Association, which was developing the first Black nationalist philosophy on the West Coast. They got me caught up. They made me feel that I had to help out, be part and do something to help out some way. 1 or 2 days later, I went around looking for Huey at the school, and I went to the library. I found Huey in the library, and I asked him, where's the meeting where the meetings were. He gave me an address and told me that there were book discussions, and that he told me the name of the book they were discussing at the time, which was Black Bourgeoisie. Huey was a large influencer on the whole campus. I got to know where Huey was on campus. I wasn't a running partner of Huey's then, but I was catching him on the streets. We all wigged out before brother Huey, and I guess everybody respected Huey's mind and also Huey's guts. He had something about him that he didn't drive over people, but he would never let anyone drive over him, especially in a violent and rowdy fashion, because I didn't know it at the time, but I learned later, Huey was a kind of hidden reputation on the block with the brothers. There were cats all over the East and West Oakland who had reputations for being bad, and they were known throughout the community for being bad. Huey didn't have this kind of reputation. The bad cats terrorized the community, and Huey terrorized the bad cats. You heard a lot of stories about Huey. Like one night at a party, Huey accidentally stepped on some brother's shoes. And Huey stepped back and he said, "Excuse me, brother." The brother, he was bad. One of those bad dudes, he said. Motherfucker, cuss me out, or don't re-shine my shoes. Huey knew his brothers very well. When the dude slid back to the side and dropped his arm slightly to the right, hanging behind his right thigh, Huey saw this. He knew this was the time to fire. Next thing you knew, Huey fired on him and decked him. And all of the other bad dudes at the party who were this decked dude's friends or partners wanted to know who this cat think he is. And so they jumped up and said that Huey needs his ass kicked. And Huey told them, "I'll fight all of you one at a time, or all of you at the same time, and you won't wait outside for me. I'll be waiting outside for you." And then he walked outside and waited and dared them to come outside. And this is something I think Huey understood too, that he would shock them because he was as bad as the noted dudes in the area. He shocked them because he had the nerve enough to fight all of them. They would come outside and think they could get around him or start sneaking around him to try and deck him. And the next thing you knew, Huey would come out with a 14 or 15-inch machete, and he'd be righteously trying to whip heads off and cut up someone's ass, and he would have the beeps running everywhere. Huey also used to get into fights with his partners who rode in the car with him. About that time, he was coming out of high school and when he was around 16 and a half or 17 years old. He had a car called the Great Roach. Huey always hit a corner, his car speeding down the road. Once he turned the corner, and a block up there was a railroad crossing with the little red light swinging, signaling that a train was coming. There was also a big building right on the corner, so you couldn't see around it. Huey started speeding up. He didn't know exactly where the train was, but he knew it was around the building somewhere. The next thing you knew, Huey had driven straight over the railroad crossing, and all the dudes in the cars were cussing him out. He tried to tell them he couldn't die. He said he didn't believe he could die, and why die 1,000 times when you can only die once? Then Huey stopped the car, and he and his partners got out to fight. Afterwards, they all got back in the car. He kept driving, and his partners would keep driving with him. I don't think Huey was trying to kill anybody. They were his partners, and they rode with them, and they liked the cat. They fought, but they kept riding with him. They would say he was crazy when he did things like that, but they thought his mind was out of sight. Most important, Huey would defend his partners or whoever he was with him. The brother was too much in his day, and all the cats knew it. I know some pimps and some hustlers and righteous gangsters on the block who knew and respected Huey. Some of them were dudes Huey used to fight. He had gotten into some tight situations with some of them, and they knew that he'd vamp up on them if they got wrong. One time, Huey walked into a liquor store to get some wine. You know how some brothers will be standing on the corner by the liquor store? He came back out and somebody said, "Hey, Beep, give me some of your wine." Huey said, "Brother, you can have some of my wine, but don't be asking me like that, like you're going to take my wine." The dude launched to fire on Huey, so Huey stepped back and broke the bottle over his head. All the dudes were standing on the corner just looking at this dude Huey had fired on. This led to one of the baddest fights that ever happened in West Oakland. Huey and a real bad dude named McLevine fought out there for about a half an hour. First, Huey down McLevine, then McLevine down Huey. It was a standoffish thing because all of the Huey's boys stood off and sat back, and all of the McLevane's boys did the same. I don't think McLevane's boys wanted to mess with Huey's boys, so they got on the fence and on the cars and watched these two black men, both brothers off the block, thunder it out there in the street. They fought all across the street until they could hardly raise their hands or throw a lick. At one point, they were so tired that Huey would come up and get a couple of licks in on McLevine and down him. And McLevine could get up and down Huey. Huey thought he had downed him finally, then walked away. He'd been drinking a lot of wine before the fight, so he got down on one knee in the middle of the street and started throwing up all of his wine. The next thing he knew, he was seeing stars. He found out later that he had been kicked in the head. McLevine had gotten up with Huey not noticing him. Huey felt himself rolling over on the pavement, but he got up and came back at McLevine and downed him again. Eventually, somebody called the pigs. That's the only thing that broke it up. The brothers saw a pig car coming down the street, flashing its red lights, and everybody split. Huey swore all up and down that the next time he saw McLevane's, he'd kill him. And McLevine swore that he was going to kill Huey. About 3 years later, Huey was walking down 7th Street in Oakland with a friend of his who had just seen that fight. Huey's friend, Buddy, recognized McLevane's as they approached him, but Huey didn't. McLevane had gotten a lot bigger. He'd been to the joint and had been throwing iron up there. Buddy looked at Huey and said, "You know who this is, man?" Huey said he didn't. Then Buddy looked at McLevine and asked him, "You know who this is here with me?" "Nah," said McLevine. Then Buddy said, "Man, you dudes don't even know each other." They each shook their heads, so Buddy said, "You beeps had one of the baddest fights that ever was fought in West Oakland." They looked at each other, and McLevine said, "That's new, man? Damn." So Buddy said, "You all ready to bury the hatchet now?" Somehow or other, they agreed to bury the hatchet and forgot it and drank some wine together. When Huey was running around and living every day on the block with some of the toughest brothers, he was just as tough as the rest of them were. He fight it out with them, and he survived in that environment. I can continue reading unless somebody would like to pick up. I'm these new glasses are really working for me. Anyone? I don't want to be a reader hog. Going once, going twice. Okay. He was at school one day and somebody said something like about some chick he was going with, some white boy, and Huey walked up to him and said, "I want to hear anything more about my relationship with this girl." The white boy opened his mouth again, and Huey said, "I said that I don't want you to say any more or make any statements about my relationship with this particular girl." The white boy opened his mouth again, and Huey decked him, laid him out, and on the basketball court on the campus here. You leaving, brother?
I'll see you, brother.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
Go to the house.
Yes. And that's when I liked the brother. He was a brother to you, to articulate things, explain things, and he could detect whether you were honest or dishonest to some extent, or whether you were bullshitting or jiving. He got some kind of intuition that he can detect this stuff about certain kinds of people. I could see Huey and say, "Man, loan me $1," and he lend me $1. And he could see me and say, "Man, let me hold a couple of dollars." It was that kind of thing. I would run into him in a cafe or something, and he might be sitting down blowing about something. Anything from law to black nationalist philosophy, how we interrelated to the system, the decadence of it, and he would be blowing facts. He would just be cleaning up the walls. If you knew Huey and I liked Huey, you would be pro Huey when it came to an argument, because he would know Huey was going to come up with some righteous facts, some righteous philosophical point of view to make you see what was going on. This is the way I saw him, and this is the way I've always thought of the cat. He's the kind of cat you always respect. He's a kind-hearted person. You can't use his kindness, but he'll give it away. So you look at him and say, "What kind of cat is this?" This brother is here as something else. And anybody else? Or is that where we end? Or
Well, that was where I was kind of planning on stopping, because that's about 12, 13 pages there. But we're actually doing pretty decent on time. I will leave this one up to the rest of you guys. Do you want to dive into the next section there too, or go straight for the discussion?
I still have time, if it's okay with everyone else.
How y'all feel about that?
We could keep going. I think.
Okay. Yeah, if everybody's down to keep going, we can get through another section. I figured that would take us longer than 45 minutes to read those two, but no, we're doing good. All right, does anybody else want to take a turn reading? Maybe Brother Kwame?
Yeah, I can take over.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Let me see. All right. So Huey breaks with the cultural nationalists. Among all the brothers, Huey was always respected for his insight. I've had a chance to meet a lot of brothers he was partners with, and they all respected his ability, his perspective, and he could explain things, how the system works against them. He could always give a valid reason why they were so right, in whatever they did, to try to survive. When Huey went to college, he never took over 8 or 9 units a semester, and that always make it a good and always make it a point to make A's and very good grades. But he didn't get the grades just because he was looking for a grade in college. Huey had a thing about going to school. It was entertainment to his mind. But he explained the A's. A counselor, but he explained the A's. Okay. A counselor told him when he got out of high school with D's, they were they they more or less rushed him through high school, that he wasn't supposed to be a college material. His counselor told him, and he rejected the whole concept of the cats in these schools, these counselors telling him that he wasn't college material. So I saw it as him entertaining his mind, as he says, and trying to grasp something. And at the same time, rejecting some white counselor, more than likely a racist, telling him that he couldn't do college. He always took 6 or 7 units, and he always would go and get outside reading material. He would go forth to prove, uh, give validity by researching the references that any particular author might have made and some particular materials they might be using in the school. So in the classroom, he was very up to date on things that were true and things that were false in any subject matter. He could see whether the facts were valid. Intertwined with all these facts, of course, was the direct relation he had to Black people living in the confines of the decadent system. Black people surviving, Black people knowing themselves in Black history. Huey took an experimental sociology course. I guess he been at Marriott a few years then. This experimental sociology course, he was running down to me about how the course was for those in it to deal with some specific problems in society. And he swung the whole class to the need for Black history in the schools. Huey P. Newton was one of the key people in the first Black history course that was developed at Marriott College, along with many of the other people in the experimental sociology course. I remember him telling me about it, and I was enthused about it because I had been doing quite a bit of Black history study myself. So come next semester, there was a Negro history course. I went to enroll in the course and got Huey one day and asked him to come to the class because the class was all jammed up. That the cat that was teaching it didn't know what he was doing. He really wasn't teaching Black history. He was teaching American history and reiterating slavery and the period of slavery in the old traditional way they relate to Black people in slavery. Huey come in the class one day, which was taught by Ronald Carlisle, a white instructor. You can go next time. Okay. Huey come in the class one day, which was taught by Ron. I got a call from prison, y'all. Y'all there? You probably can't hear me no more because I got this call. But I'll
So
jump back
we
on.
can hear you. I think Comrade
Okay.
Shanti can take over. And do you want to highlight, Sam, where we left off? I think Rodney Carlisle.
Right here, I believe,
Yeah.
is where you're at. If you want to pick up there, Sean, I saw you offered to read next.
Huey, come in the class one day, which was taught by Rodney Carlisle, a white instructor. Huey, as always, shot Carlisle down for his reference to Basil Davis and information concerning Africa and Black Mother and African slave trade. Set him down on the point of the piracy that initiated the slave trade. Huey gave inspiration to a lot of brothers and sisters to do a lot of in-depth study and realize the need to have knowledge of themselves, Black people. By the way, thanks for highlighting. That really helped.
You're welcome.
About 3 years before this took place, I got into the Afro-American Association, and about 2 months later, Huey got out. I was wondering, why did Huey get out of the Afro-American Association? His partners, John Thomas and Richard Thorne, cats he knew around. Hang on a sec. Shut up! dogs being noisy. Um, he knew around the time and ran with a lot were college students. These dudes weren't dudes off the block. They also got out of the Afro American Association. Huey began to explain how Donald Wharton was using the Afro American Association as a means to deceive Black people. That Donald Wharton was very up to date with a lot of historical facts and used these facts to make Black people see his program as being right. But Huey had finally seen through Donald Wharton's program and had seen through Donald Wharton. One day in San Francisco, Fillmore Street, some white gang a couple of stories up began to hang out the window, hollering cuss words and bullcrap. Some of them came downstairs. They got to acting like they were going to jump on somebody. Huey and another brother were there throwing hands and knocking cats on their ass while Donald Wharton wouldn't help defend the principal. That's one thing about Huey. He stands on principles. Black nationalist philosophy at this time was interrelated with his principles. Somebody was going to try to jump on the brothers on the street where Afro American Association was holding a rally. Huey just went on and got out there and started throwing hands. And that's when he began to find Donald Wharton out, I think. From there, he began to explain how Donald Wharton was exploiting the old church thing, preacher type attitude and concept. The people around business. This was the real split in terms of Black nationalist philosophy at the time. Huey saw that more cooperative, socialistic type things were necessary for Black people to use to oppose the system. It would admit if a businessman is charging you the same prices, or higher, even higher prices than exploiting white businessmen, then he himself nothing but an so why should Black people go for this kind of system? He always dealt with it in this fashion. Coming up on the ladder, there were some long periods of time I didn't see Huey. Then one day I saw Huey and he was talking about a case he just beat. He defended himself in court and had beaten a petty theft case.
Comrade Sean, we're losing your audio.
I'm sorry about that. My phone just killed Zoom for half a second. Should I continue or?
Yeah, I can hear you fine now. If everybody else can hear you okay.
Yeah, okay.
I think we were right here.
Yeah, and he was running it down how he got Olson. Olson was the dean of Merritt College. Dean Olson had got up on the stand and testified to the fact that he had called the police in to have Huey P. Newton arrested, and had the police bring Huey to his office because some patty boy over in the store had accused Huey of stealing a book. Huey explained to me that Olson had asked him if those were his books. Huey said, "Yes, this is my property," right in front of the face of this cop. And Olson said, "Well, I'll just keep these books." And Huey said, "No, you won't keep those books. That's my property, and I'll keep them myself. You called me in the office for something. I don't know what you want me for, but I'll keep my property." And Huey snatched the books up, back out of his hand and said, "If you want to arrest me, you'll have to arrest me, but I'm not going to stand here talking." And he walked right out of the office. So the same thing came up on the stand, and Huey asked Olson on the stand, "Dean Olson, why didn't you have me placed under arrest if you thought I had stolen the books?" Huey was rapping. You know, if you ever catch him in court during a law procedure, he raps just like a righteous lawyer. David Olson said, "Well, at that time, I just didn't know my rights as to whether or not I had the right to arrest you." Huey P. Newton looked at the jury, looked back at David Olson, and looked back at the jury. "Mr. Olson, you're a dean at the college, have a PhD in education. Here I am, a student in college, learning my rights, and you've got a PhD, and you tell me you don't know your rights? Huey went on to explain the impact he made on the jury with that point and how they cut him loose. He became very, very famous, very well known, very notorious against anybody who'd done him wrong around the college. Well-liked cat, well-liked brother, very friendly with people, and Huey had very human qualities about himself. That's another thing about Huey. I remember one time there were some black nationalists, cultural nationalists on the campus who used to project all of this cultural nationalism. They were so engrossed in this cultural nationalism, they just hated white people simply for the color of their skin. This is where Huey and I got this thing about cultural nationalists. Huey had opened the door for a sister to go through. You know how a man opens a door for a woman? There happened to be. Hang on a sec. Shut. Damn it, Paula! There happened to be a white girl coming up behind the sister, and so the white girl walked in. So one of the cultural nationalists ran up to him and said, "How come you open the door for that white girl?" And Huey turned around and looked at him. He said, "Look, I'm a human being. I'm not a fool. I opened the door for the sister. There happened to be a white girl behind me. White girl's not tiny. She's not scroll, brutalizing me. So there's nothing wrong with me keeping the door open for her to pass through too." And the cultural nationalists just went out of their minds, exaggerating the shit. And that's just one point to show Huey's humanism toward all other human beings. This is the way he is. When I look back at some of the things that Huey was thinking at the time, and a lot of the things that Huey understood then, I know that I didn't understand them at the time, but I followed Huey because he clarified these things for me. Continue?
I was just about to ask that myself, because these sections aren't super long or anything. Y'all down to dive into another one?
I'm game.
Right on.
You're
Okay.
always game.
No, it's good reading too. So it's like, anyway, Livy, be quiet and read on, comrade.
I had been running with some cultural nationalists, the Seoul Students Advisory Council. I had been running with some cultural nationalists for around two or 3 years. The so-called West Coast Underground RAM, Revolutionary Action Movement. I got very frustrated with those cats. I didn't think they were going to do anything. And I became very discouraged about being able to work with them. They had a lot of paranoid hangups, and they began to accuse me of these things. They had so many bullcrap suspicions, I couldn't deal with them. I broke loose from those cats. I got mad at them one night and busted down their door. All the niggers hid behind their damn beds. At one point, I couldn't deal with them anymore because they wouldn't defend themselves, even against one little old me. There were 4 or 5 of them in the pad, but they ran hiding. I just didn't respect them anymore. I was thinking to myself, later for these dudes, I'm going to find myself a righteous partner to righteously run with. I really hadn't seen Huey for over a year now. One night, I was just sitting on the street in front of James Oliver's house, about a block up the street from Merritt College, and Huey came by. I didn't know who it was at first. I was sitting there in the car drinking a beer or something, and Huey flashed a little flashlight through the window. I think he recognized my car. I had seen him walking down the street a couple of times, but I think he knew I had that car. I said, "What's happening, man?" I said to myself, now this is who I ought to be running with. And I had wanted Huey to be a part of the same cultural nationalist group I had been running with, and these dudes didn't want Huey to be a part of the organization. At first, I couldn't figure out why. but I remember I had asked Huey to come up to the pad, and after he left, silly-ass Kenneth Freeman sat up and said some bullcrap about Huey P. Newton comes from a bourgeois family. Huey P. Newton was raised up righteously on the block, and of course, Kenny Freeman was the one who had come from the bougie family. Bougie. Blah, blah, blah. He was also saying, that dude's high, man. I said, well, what's the difference? He gets a little loaded off something, and I drink whiskey. As I think about it, I don't think Kenny Freeman liked us field niggers too much. I don't think he dug us at all, because he knew Huey was the type of dude who didn't take no shit, and I figure he had a little egotistical, uh, bougie ass fear about Huey kicking motherfuckers' asses and the way Huey articulates things. Huey came walking up that night with a flashlight, and I said, this is who I need to be running with. Older brother Huey. This brother can righteously run it down and don't take no shit, this brother will stand with you. And this is the way I felt about the brother. And knowing him for those years, I'd been knowing him about 5 years by then. I started talking to the brother about the struggle, and I think he must have recognized that I was well frustrated with those cultural nationalists I'd been running with, the so-called underground ram. One day I went over to his house, and asked him if he had read Fanon. I'd read Wretched of the Earth 6 times. I knew Fanon was right, and I knew he was running it down. But how do you put ideas like his over? Huey was laying up in bed, thinking, plotting on the man. I knew what he was doing. He used to tell me how he was plotting to make himself some money on the man. He was involved with the day-to-day survival like the average brother on the block. He said no, he hadn't read Fanon. So I brought Fanon over one day. That brother got to reading Fanon, and man, let me tell you, when Huey got a hold of Fanon and read Fanon, I had always been running down about how we need this organization, that organization, but never anything concrete. Huey'd be thinking hard. We'd sit down with the wretched of the earth and talk, and go over another section or chapter of Fanon, and Huey would explain it in depth. It's the first time I ever had anybody who could show a clear-cut perception of what was said in one sentence, a paragraph, or chapter, and not have to read it again. He knew it already. He'd get it on the streets. We'd be walking down the street and get in some discussion with somebody, and throughout the process of this discussion and argument, Huey would be citing facts, citing the material, and giving perception to it. At that time, he was giving the same basic concepts as he's giving now, but now he's in a wider and broader area because he's had a lot of experience in leadership in the Black Panther Party. His development now at the head, oh, hang on a sec. His development now is at the head of the revolutionary struggle, but he always had his vast ability to do things along with a proper perspective, and he could run it down and get things going. Huey was one for implementing things, and I guess this is where the Black Panther Party really started, because once Huey got hung on that, he started explaining how we had to get something going. Before the Black Panther Party came, the Seoul Students Advisory Council, some of the other cultural nationalists in the college, and a couple I'd broken up with and gotten tired of messing with, they were jiving to me, and are still jiving. Some of them came around. They were talking about starting some organization, a school campus organization. Well, Huey and I got interested in the thing, and a couple of other cats, Virtual Mural, and Alex Papillon. We started talking about organizing what we named a little while later Soul Students Advisory Council. We structured the thing in such a way where we really practice ultra democracy among ourselves. At the same time, Huey wanted to make things very meaningful. So the so-called central group of the Soul Students Advisory Council consisted of Virtual Mural, Alex Papillon, Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, Isaac Moore, and a couple of jive cultural nationalists around there. Huey and I decided we were going to try to make the thing work, to develop a college campus group, and to help develop leadership, to go with the Black community and serve the Black community in a revolutionary fashion. I was with Huey all the way. So, Soul Students was moving along, and meanwhile, Huey and I and Alex Papillon and Virtual Mural put out a lot of hard work into getting a few things off the ground. The draft of the Black men was a big thing on college campuses, of course. Just the draft itself became high controversy. But we had just begun talking about the draft of Black men. We organized one of the biggest rallies ever held at Merritt College, where 500 or 600 Black people attended, and ran it down. From there, Huey, Virtual, Alex, and myself were known as the leaders of the Soul Students Advisory Council. Huey and I and Weasel, one of the brothers on the campus, oops, lost myself. Oh, we're all sitting in the car one night. We decided we wanted to buy some records by T-Bone Walker, Lightning Hopkins, and Helen Wolf, these down-home brothers. I suggested we go up to the Cal campus because up around there they have more LPs of T-Bone Walker, Helen Wolf, and all the brothers than they have in the regular Black record shop. We started walking down the street on Telegraph toward the Forum, a restaurant up there. We were about a block from the Forum where the brothers asked me to recite one of them poems I always liked. One of them was named Burn, Baby, Burn. The other was Uncle Sammy, Call Me Full of Lucifer. I was walking down the street reciting Burn, Baby, Burn, all the way down till we got to the next block, and then Huey and Weasel asked me to recite the other poem, Uncle Sammy Called Me Full of Lucifer. So when I got to reciting that poem, I said 2 or 3 words, and when we got up in front of the Forum across the street, one of the brothers, Weasel, got over and picked a chair up. It's kind of a sidewalk restaurant. He said, "Here, Bobby, stand on this." So we set the chair up by the curb there, and I got on the chair and hollered, "Uncle Sammy called me full of Lucifer." And when I said that, I went on to recite the rest of the poem. Then somebody said, "Do it again, run it down again, man." So I got to the part of the poem where it said, "You school my naive heart to sing red, white, and blue stars and stripes songs." Some uniformed pig cop walked up. He stood around 10 or 12 feet away. I said, "You school my naive heart to sing the red, white, and blue stars and stripes songs, and to pledge eternal allegiance to all things blue, true, blue-eyed blonde, blonde-haired, white chalk, white skin with the USA tattooed all over." Man, when I said that, this cop walks up and says, "You're under arrest." I got down off the chair and said, "What are you talking about? You're under arrest." "Under arrest for what? What reason do you have for saying I'm under arrest?" And he says, "You're blocking the sidewalk." And I say, "What do you mean I'm blocking the sidewalk? I'm standing over here." I noticed Huey standing to my left. Next thing I know, some people started grabbing on me. "You're under arrest. You under arrest." I started snatching away from them, man. Next thing I know, Huey was battling up there, and 3 patties had me down, tied down onto the ground. One of the patties that had hold of me, Huey knocked him down, knocked him in the head a couple of times, and a couple of other brothers stomped on the patties. I got loose. A big fight was going on, but boy, they say Huey whipped up some motherfuckers up there. They say Huey was throwing hands. That's why I say Huey or his partners always went down with him. It's just one of them things. He relates to any brothers he's with. He doesn't let anybody mess over his partners or whoever he's running with. That's the way he is. That's the way he is with his people against this racist, decadent system. That's the way he gets with any human being who tries to hurt him or his friends, and his people and his family. That was a big thing. Huey and I, Huey and I got busted that night. I fooled around and got busted a block away from the thing. Since we were the leaders of the Soul Students Advisory Council at the time, and Huey and I had to have a lawyer, Virtual Mural went to the SSAC Treasury, got $50, and gave us 25 apiece to secure ourselves lawyers after we got ourselves bailed out. It took us 3 days to get Huey bailed out of jail. He was on probation, and at first his probation officer put a hold on him, but later cut the hold loose. 3 weeks after Huey was bailed out, some brother got busted right in front of our car. Huey was getting ready to vamp on the pigs because he knew the brother wasn't doing a thing. He was a citizen, just standing around observing, about 10 or 12 feet away from our car. And the cops went up to him and wanted to bust him for nothing. Huey said, "We've got some money in the SSAC treasury. We're going to bail this brother out." Me and Alex Papillon held Huey back. More pigs came up, and they made me and Alex line up against the wall and drew pistols on us. Then they arrested the brother who had just been standing around. So we went and bailed the brother out. We're going to use the SSAC to begin learning how to serve our community. The brother got busted on a bullshit tip for no reason. Bail the brother out, we said.
Oh, goodness, Sean. Oh man, I love this insight here that he's given to, like the foundations of the Panther Party, of them just looking around and seeing shit needs handled in their community and diving right into it. Like, all right, ain't nobody else handling it. We'll fucking handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I figured this would probably be a good spot to stop for today. We can pick
I
back
thought so
up
too.
and hit the streets next week. Might as well dive into the discussion here. Anybody who's got some thoughts, the floor is open. Go for it.
I mean, like it's so funny, like this, like because I never truly knew about the upbringing of the Black Panther Party. I already knew about Merritt College. I knew about Merritt College, but I did not know the actual backstory. And the fact that this is that backstory, that's really, really telling because I'm a college dropout. But the school that I went to, Grambling State University in Louisiana, um, Quay's birthplace. And it was a few months before that I found out that I was going to school 45 minutes away from where Quay was born and raised. And it was kind of like, it was just like, what? I get to be down the road from Quay's birthplace? Like that, that kind of Southern upbringing, that deep Southern New Africa upbringing, that kind of played into how Quay, Huey, became Quay Newton because of that Southern upbringing. But you could tell he was from the South. like people tell he's from the Deep South. And so like kind of learning from my year of being at Grambling, learning more about him. Um, because I didn't get to go to Monroe, but I did kind of pick up tidbits here and there of his upbringing in Monroe. And, he, like it's very, very telling, like he's from, the South, because, the people from, especially the Deep South, they hold no prisoners, literally. Like, they're bold like that. Like, they'll literally just tell you straight up, just, that, like, that's literally me as well. So, like, Bobby Seale being from Dallas, which is right near the cusp of East Texas, which is part of the Deep uh, South territory, the new Africa territory. Um, you know, kind of seeing that upbringing, like really kind of played a big role into how they became Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton. You know what I'm saying? And especially about the cultural nationalists, like that's very, very, very much that, because there's a lot of cultural nationalism that goes on a lot, which is essentially reactionary and not really confronting the problem, what we have today, the blacks versus the non-blacks, you know what I'm saying, like, being very, very high strung and hyper protective of our culture and our heritage, because it's been so commodified and just so capitalized off of, they stole everything from us. We see kind of every so-called non-black person as the enemy, even those so-called non-blacks that are of African heritage, who are African. They're, because of what they look like, they they see they see them as the enemy, but that's not quite the case, because you cannot think with your eyes. And that's the thing with cultural nationalism. You think with your eyes. You don't think, in the perspective of class. You only think with your eyes, what your eyes see. And you cannot be a nationalist thinking with your eyes, because you're going to get people hurt, and you're actually hurting your culture, even our culture, even more, because new African culture is very diverse. Hoodoo, blues, rock and roll, all of that stuff. Um, you know, the fact that, and also cultural pro played a big role into why there's so much cultural nationalism within African people, because of this belief that the so-called non-blacks have abandoned us, and they've profited off of all of us, and they never been on our side, and all of a sudden they just decided to drop us, to separate us from our struggle. So we kind of have to separate from them, and hate them, so much, and kind of tell them that they're in the wrong, even though it's the bourgeois system doing all the puppet mastering. But it's kind of like that's essentially what cultural nationalism is. It's very reactionary, and they don't have a revolutionary base. They just going off based on what they see with their eyes. And once again, thinking with their eyes. You cannot think with your eyes. That's what this is what Kwame said. Cultural, you can change your name to an African name, and you can wear all of our traditional clothes and adopt all of our indigenous community structures that you want. But if it's not a revolutionary base actively, then it's ornamental, recreational, and reactionary. And in that section, that's essentially what cultural nationalism is, especially amongst African people, the so-called Black people. So, this kind of to see this more clearly is very, very, very important, because you can see why, we have to be very, very aware when it comes to cultural nationalism because once again it is reactionary, and the fact that Bobby mentioned the Black Bourgeoisie book. I actually read that book. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing book on the so-called middle class of Black America being on the same level as the actual bourgeois, people. You know what I'm saying? Like being middle class is literally not enough to free the people, and that's essentially what Black bourgeois goes into. So like Huey is literally me. Like he's literally me. Like I hold no punches. Like I can tell when someone's being honest or dishonest. Like every single thing that Bobby said about Huey is literally me. So like this resonates with me in a lot of ways because it I'm at the peak of my politics now, and it took 3 years up until I started really being introduced pretty much on accident to the new African independence movement, and then in May to the Puerto Rican independence movement, to the Boricua liberation struggle with the New Era Young Lords, and like that really, I mean, this is literally me on these sections. Like that's literally what happened even after I had dropped out back in May because I don't want to assimilate, and of course other stuff, class warfare stuff. It was I really see myself in the story because I have the similar upbringing, the similar situations, dealing with these, cultural nationalists, these ethno revisionists, these ethno fascists, the Israelite crowd and the Aboriginal crowd, that crowd, those crowds. And so like the fact that Quay didn't saw through their bullshit, especially back then, this because this is when it was, the actual plight of revolution amongst colonized people really started to take ground. Because I think like before CONTAPRO really became CONTAPRO, and I think this was kind of like coming off like the main McCarthy era, I believe. So like the fact that like Huey was really ahead of his time, like there was no denying that. Like Huey really saw through those cultural nationalists and was seeing through their bullshit, which a lot of us should because they had no class understanding. That's essentially the thing. They knew culture, but they didn't understand class. And so they were just once again going off on reactionary um, bullshit that is not really that's not really helping them at all. Even Huey opened the door for the white girl, and they were coming at Huey for it. And Huey was like, no, 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 no. I'm literally just opening the door. It's literally not that serious. It's literally not that serious. But that's the point. With cultural nationalism, with no revolutionary class conscious base, it's just reactionary bullshit that is literally not helpful for African people whatsoever. So the fact that Huey saw through them, even back in those days, is very, very telling that he was indeed ahead of his time.
He really was. And it's things that definitely carry over into lessons that we still have to teach and preach today about Black capitalism not being anything that will solve any of these systemic problems, all the way down to the economic disparity that is part of this systemic racism here. It's a big reason why white nationalists, white supremacists, actually agree with a lot of what Black nationalists say, because they're both talking about separatism and all that bullshit. And that's one of the things we do still have to call out today when we see these Black nationalist talking points and go, do you realize the fucking neo-Nazis are saying the same thing? They agree with you wholeheartedly. There's a fucking problem there.
It's the same people.
Yeah, same ideology, just from opposite ends of the spectrum, and both ignoring the fact that this is a class struggle. You know,
Like,
it's really fucking important to, break these things down and raise people's awareness when it comes to class consciousness, because at the end of the day, this system, yes, it is shitting on people who are Black or brown or red harder than anybody, but there's also a lot of poor white people out there who, if you can't get past that nationalist point of view, you're not going to find that they are actually your comrades too, and that there's a purpose in uniting together. And this is why the first Rainbow Coalition was even formed, of bringing everybody together with some class consciousness and addressing these things
right.
in a more holistic manner, and being able to address the actual problems involved here. Comrade Joe, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, before I go on to what I thought of today's reading, I just wanted to bring out, and I brought it out probably on one of these groups, but what's that black gentleman's name? Cornel West, I believe.
Yeah.
He's trying to run for presidency. Can I ask you, revolutionary comrades, me that's not really politically savvy, what's your take on that, and any feedback on that? Because it kind of relates to, I think it's similar to what they were dealing with back then. But let me hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's essentially the same. It's essentially the same thing. You know, I don't know why anyone wants to support Cornel West after the shit that we've been through for the past 3 years. Really, like, y'all talking revolution, but you're supporting Cornel West. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense to you guys. Like, we're being weaponized in droves every single day, and you think that a third party, candidate is going to make it any better. No, it is not. The libertarians are not innocent either, because they're part of the problem too. They're just not part of that political bourgeois binary. But still, the same thing applies. I don't support Cornel West. I do not support electoral politics at all. No one should. After the shit that we've been through for the past 3 years, I think that was a big freaking mistake with the last election, and the last election, and the last election, and the election, and the election before that, and the election before that. Pretty much every single election that we've been given are not rights to even participate in, so that we can continue this bourgeois system. Cornel West is not going to save us. And Sister Souljah called his ass out on Donahue, as she should. Sister Souljah, one of the best. She talked about how these institutions, these petty bougie institutions, are not enough to save African children from dying mentally, spiritually, emotionally, academically. We don't have the right kind of institutions to really get us towards a communist condition, a socialist condition, and a self-determining condition. So essentially, in other words, Cornel West is a piece of shit. I don't support him. No one should. I don't think, once again, I don't think anyone should support electoral politics anymore, especially after what we've been going through for the past 3 years. I think everyone should literally boycott permanently. Because if we're going to keep lying to ourselves and just keep going to the voting ballots while, other places are literally facing capitalist-driven climate change, floodings all over the damn place, not human-driven, capitalist-driven, because blaming human beings alone for climate change is eco-fascist, and a lot of us don't know that. You know, we need a kick in the ass back into reality, because I don't care about a so-called black man with a uh with bougie status, with glasses. I don't care. I don't care. I do not care. Because the fact of the matter is, many of these people, none of these people were ever even for the self-determination and the sovereignty of African people within these colonial borders in the political context and we are, you know, contained. Not for Africans, not for Chicanos, not for Boricuas, not for Asian people, not for Hawaiians, because you know Hawaii is not part of, you know, so-called America. It's it's Oceania. Okay, that's where Hawaii is. Native islands literally being under siege by the U.S. and you think that Cornel West is going to save us? No, 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 no. They don't get any more chances. It's it. It's done. It's over with. It's over with. It's done. The 2020 election, y'all should have learned better. But y'all blame Flint for the water crisis and making jabs at Texans for not voting hard enough, at Floridians for not voting hard enough. Do y'all not understand that they have no power whatsoever? Those citizens have no power whatsoever. It doesn't matter how many blue votes you get in. The government is going to mess with them and literally keep those citizens, those proletariats, under siege. Did y'all not learn from the winter storm 2 years ago? Oh no, wait, it's the Texan citizens' fault. Okay, keep lying to yourself. Keep lying to yourself. Keep blaming Southerners for why, like, we're even in this predicament, because y'all do know that the North is not innocent either. Did y'all forget about New York? Did y'all forget about Chicago? Did y'all forget about Milwaukee? Did y'all forget about LA?
Hell,
Like,
Rhode Island was one of the largest sites for slave ships coming in, docking in, selling human beings. And
like,
you know, there's a reason why the state was actually originally named Rhode Island Plantations and only recently changed its fucking name. There's a lot of slave trade that happened in the Northeast coast, and a lot of people are unaware of it because of this bullshit that's been passed along of like, oh, the North stood against slavery. No, not all of the North.
no, they did not. And y'all really think y'all are better than these new Africans and these Chicanos down here? Really? How can you lie to yourself? How can you even lie to yourself saying that? And you think that a third party candidate is going to save us too? Like this is the shit that killed our potential years ago. This is what killed our years ago, because we keep going to the wrong people and we were being infiltrated from the inside out. We were neutralized. We were being killed. We were leaving into exile, going underground, even though some figures did stay in the play, including Mutulu Shakur and Asada Shakur and Sophia Bukhardi. Those figures, you know, they still went going, but it was not enough people united to even continue the fight and to grow it and to be able to mature from a starting point. Because when Fred was killed, you know, that was it. We were Swiss cheese. You know, the material conditions got way worse, and that's how we ended up here. And y'all really think that a third party candidate is supposed to make things better? Y'all just skipping whole chunks of history, like literally not understanding at all that none of these people ever care for us. None of these people saved us. None of, like, just like Sister Soldier said, none of you Negroes saved me. Okay? None of you Negroes saved me. They didn't save any of us. Who are they saving? Who are they saving?
They're saving their profit margins.
They're saving their
let's be honest, even if you're a quote unquote third party in this system, you're still catering to the system itself. I see Cornel West basically as like a black Bernie Sanders. He is a democratic socialist, which means, yes, he has some talking points that sound socialist, but he wants that shit to still be operating under capitalism with merely a social safety net added to it, and that don't go far enough. That is not eradicating the capitalism that is actually the root of the fucking problem and causing economic disparity and straight up fucking oppression under this system. It is merely a slower form of fascism than the accelerationists on the far right want to push.
Like that's literally what the thing is. And Cornel West was doing a radio interview, I believe, a few weeks ago, and he was talking about capitalism and imperialism and stuff like that. I forgot exactly what he said, but he was talking about those two. And I was looking at the video and I was like, if you believe this, then why are you running for the same position that upholds it? Why are you running for the same position in the same system that has literally aided in the destruction of your people? Why? Why
Right.
Why are we here? How did we even get here? Why are we even here? Why would you run for the same position that is literally uplifting the bourgeois system?
Because he is a member of the bourgeoisie. And
Like,
there's only one example I can think of somebody who's a third party candidate who's run and not for that purpose, and that's Gloria Rivera. She ran for the Communist Party, and she stated flat out she had no intention on actually becoming president. She simply ran as a candidate for president in order to grab people's attention and go, hey, this system is fucked and you guys need to, pay some attention to what's actually going on here and what we actually need to do of dismantling capitalism, and at least used that platform to be able to pull more people into the communist movement. But otherwise, no, the rest of these third party candidates aren't really doing shit. They're working within the existing system.
Exactly.
It's all fucked. And I see both Joe and Sean have their hands up, so I know y'all got some commentary to bring in here too.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I just, before Sean, if I can get a second, fortunately I don't vote. I have never voted in my life. But us Chicanos, that just like I pay respect to those in the South that want to make a new African a statehood in 5 different states in the South. I support that as long as they still recognize the indigenous peoples. And then in the Southwest, the Chicanos, we have our own third party system that we've been working on, and it's called the Partido de la Raza Unida Party, or it's Partido is party. So I kind of translated in English and Spanish. So and it is a third party system, and I really liked the comment, like, so you're doing a third party system to actually go and sit in the same house and rub elbows with the rest of the schmucks. I was like, that's a good point right there. I mean, I still support the thought process of it within the partido, but really, I am against politics. I've been against politics since I was a kid. Hell, I never voted in my life, and I didn't even register for the draft. I was like, like my paperwork is very slim. Go ahead, comrades. And I think Sean wanted to go next. Go ahead.
All right, 3 points. First, you guys were talking about slavery, and oh yeah, we abolished the whole darn thing. But literally in 2021, they busted in Georgia a farm that had over 100 migrant workers as slaves. I don't know if anybody caught that. Point 1. Point 2. I don't really remember what point 2 was. I think it had to do with ranked voting. I mean, I've voted all my life, and not a fucking thing has changed. We got weed. That's it. We got weed.
Hey, at least
In
we
I
got
got a thought
California.
on that when you're done.
But I mean, yes, I absolutely see the system needs to be reformed. I guess this is point 2 and 3. But, also having it as a binary left wing, right wing just does not work because it pigeonholes people into left or right. Having a ranked voting system as you guys were talking about the electoral college. I'm all for abolishing the goddamn thing. It has not fucking helped the goddamn thing. And which is why I propose, like ranked voting as a thing. I've seen it in other countries. And so your first choice isn't, on the ballot. Your second choice might be, your third choice might be. And, being able to put their names down in that way for anybody who is eligible and anybody who is willing to step into the ring and do the right fucking thing, I'm all for it. But at the same time, burn it down. Burn it all the way fucking down.
Well, that's the thing is, reformism doesn't actually help. That's basically dancing a cha-cha. You're stepping forward, stepping back, stepping forward, stepping back. You ain't gonna get any fucking where with that shit. Because every time that something gets passed that is slightly helpful, the next administration walks it right the fuck back as soon as they come into power. Which brings to mind a couple more things. First, this paradigm of left wing and right wing in the United States is false. Absolutely fucking false, because Democrats are not fucking left wing.
They're
Versus
centrist at best.
Economic stance. Right wing is capitalist. Left wing, true leftism, begins with anti-capitalism. So that means actual socialist, not dem-soc, not social dem, but actual socialist and communist and anarchist. Anti-capitalist. So these shitlibs calling themselves the left are fucking lying through their teeth. Maybe they've bought into the propaganda themselves and really believe that they are left wing, but so long as they support capitalism, they are not fucking left wing. They are right wing, and they are barely a hair left in ideology from Republicans. So if you look at the actual fucking global spectrum on politics, both the Democrats and the Republicans reside in the upper right-hand corner, which is capitalist and extremely authoritarian. So therein lies a big part of this false duopoly, because they are each other's controlled opposition. They're both fascist. They're both capitalists. They're both out to line their fucking pockets and fuck everybody else over in the process, because they see us as nothing but chattel. It's no different really than slavery, because it is just an open air fucking prison of wage slavery.
Yeah.
The only difference being your boss doesn't have the privilege to physically abuse you and kill you like they did under slavery. But slavery, also rewinding back to another thought you had a moment ago about slavery ending with the 13th Amendment, no, it did not. It merely got allotted to the prison system. And under the current political system, they can demonize and criminalize you for literally any fucking thing out there in order to throw your ass in prison and make you a literal slave again. Working for what, pennies an hour? That ain't shit. That is straight up fucking slavery. So this system has not fucking changed. Nothing has improved for the people. My other thought when it comes to the voting shit, and you brought up marijuana, this is a good example. And so is, the states that actually codified abortion as a legal right after Roe got repealed. The only fucking place where your vote counts at all in this system is on local legislation that can actually protect some of your human rights in the meantime until we get to a revolution and be able to overthrow all of the bullshit. Your vote doesn't mean dick when it comes to voting for which fucking politician is the lesser of two evils. It's still fucking evil. None of them fucking represent us. They never have. They never fucking will. They're opportunists who merely get into office to line their own fucking pockets with legalized bribery of lobbyists cutting them fucking checks left and right to write legislation that serves these corporations and violates the rights of the people, the constituents who literally voted them into fucking place. You're fucking yourself over if you're voting for politicians. You might be able to make a difference if it's something like, okay, the people have put this bill on the ballot because we want marijuana. Fucking vote for that shit. Cool. More power to you. I worked on some of those medical marijuana campaigns, collecting signatures to get the shit on the ballot, because that's something that actually does affect some change and help decriminalize things so that there's less people they can throw into prison as nouveau slavery. But when it comes down to it, anything else, voting for people, you ain't doing shit. And I see you got some thoughts, Sean. And then when you're done, go ahead, Joe, because I see you just threw your hand up.
Okay, so the part that really has me right now is not only do they have our politicians left and right paid for, they've managed to buy the Supreme Court.
Bingo.
And it's very, very apparent. And what I know the founding fathers wrote it so that every 20 or so years, as the country evolved, we were supposed to rewrite the whole damn Constitution for us. And, I don't, in all of my studies, not that I'm very, very literate in all of that, I've never seen anything on handling the Supreme Court who are either bought and paid for or under, somebody's thumb because of blackmail, whatever. These people run one wing of the supposed three branches of government, and there is no accountability whatsoever. And how the fuck do we deal with that?
And the fucking entire practice of them being anointed to their fucking position by whatever president is in power for one.
For life.
And ending this practice of them having this position for the rest of their fucking lives. Because both of those facets fuck over the people. We need accountability across the board. We don't have accountability in any of these branches of government. None of them are held accountable to us. None of them have repercussions that they have to face of being immediately fucking repealed if, they aren't abiding by what their constituents want. There's no accountability there. And the Supreme Court is probably the worst example of that because of them automatically getting anointed to these positions for the rest of their fucking life. That should not even be allowed. It's bad enough already that the White House is a fucking nursing home. We got motherfuckers who can't even fucking stay awake through meetings, making decisions for the rest of the country that they're completely fucking out of touch with. They don't know shit about the day-to-day lives of the common people because they ain't been common people in fucking decades if they ever were. We need to end the practice of you only being able to get into those positions if you come from money and have a fuck ton of money to pay for campaigning. The whole fucking 9 yards. The entire system is fucked. And going back to what you were saying about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, there is a reason why it was written the way that it was. And in the First Amendment protecting your freedom of speech, that is so that you can call out the tyrannical government. And the Second Amendment literally states in there that your right to bear arms comes down to not just the right, but the obligation to
Form well-armed
overthrow a
militias.
fucking tyrannical government. That if the government becomes tyrannical, it's our job to dismiss them all and form a
Tar and
new
feather.
one.
I say we bring tarring and feathering back. That was very effective.
I mean, that guillotines, the whole fucking. There's a lot
Yeah,
we can do.
guillotine. Sure.
I'm-
Yeah. No, I'm down with the choppy chop, boys.
Okay, like, can we please bring that back? Because this is not helping any of us at all. You cannot vote your way out of being a slave to the bourgeois system. You can't. It doesn't work like that. And, I know there's like certain things that you haven't, picked up on. So I'll, give you like some leeway with that. But, in the simple words, you cannot reform anything. That's the thing. You cannot reform anything. This is what Asada have been telling us. You cannot ask the oppressor to free you. It doesn't work like that. You can't do that. You cannot do that. George Jackson, may he rest in motherfucking power, have said himself that, the definition of fascism is always changing with the times. But in simple terms, if you really put fascism in simple words, it's economic reform. That's essentially what you're engaging in. Economic reform. That's it. You cannot rank votes your way out of being a slave. Ranking votes, you're still a slave. Voting harder, you're still a slave. And your land will be flooded because the capitalist system has all of our resources and are poisoning them, poisoning whatever they have sucked dry out of a particular piece of land. I mean, we're already seeing floods in Italy and Greece and Spain and Libya and Morocco within the past week. You cannot bring votes your way out of land being destroyed.
Damn right.
Not how Native people operated. That is not how African people operated. And it's important for us that we strategize and educate and strategize, because you cannot economic reform your way out of being a slave. That's essentially the thing.
Let me walk something back real quick. I did say opt for burning it down because I know that is the only valid option at this point. But what we build forward, yes, absolutely, we should be modeling after indigenous and African practices because it has worked for the entirety of human history. It has worked.
Right.
That's the thing. Under our current system, your vote doesn't mean shit. But come time for the revolution, when we rebuild and we are operating under democratic centralism, where it is organized from the bottom up, where the political power is actually in the hands of the masses, and anybody who is elected to any seat is held accountable and can be yeeted right the fuck out of their seat just as fast as they were put in it if they fuck up, things like that. That's when your vote will actually count, and that is when ranked choice voting will actually have a positive impact. There's no kind of voting that would actually help under this system. We need to eradicate this system. We need to eradicate its ideas of like the electoral college that has done nothing but concentrate power in the hands of rural, wealthy white men, which is exactly what it was built to do. That is why the electoral college exists. We need to annihilate ideas like that and get to a core of democratic centralism that is organized in the hands of people, where the power is actually in your hands, where your vote actually fucking counts and isn't being outweighed up to 65 times as much. Right now, if you are a voter in LA, your vote carries as much weight as 1/65th of someone in like Montana. There's a reason for that, and it is to concentrate power into the hands of the oppressors. Joe, I see you got your hand back up. Go ahead, comrade.
Yeah, thank you, comrades. Because, like I said, I've never voted before, so I don't know about politics like that and the whole ranked choice voting and stuff like that. So So I want to appreciate all of y'all for sharing that knowledge, because I don't have, who do I ask? Like, I mean, I'm not going to get that information from Joe Schmo down the street, because he's going to lead me in the wrong direction, obviously. So thanks about that.
Well,
But one of the things I wanted to go back to the book on the early parts of Bobby and stuff, and then the difficulties he had with his father, that trauma carries on through generations and stuff, and then the fact that he actually learned construction from his father, and I guess that was the way in the old days. They were very strict with us, and like, but we did get our fair share of beatings. I know a lot has changed since then, but I think I was at the tail end of it, like literally. But and then, but to learn construction and stuff, and then to say that his father was one of the first people in the union, as a black brother in the carpenters union in California. So I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty cool. That's pretty crazy." Because I remember my grandfather telling me stories back, and he says that there was not black people in the construction field or in the union in California, and if there was only like one or two, or at the most three at any given time, and that even went on into the like 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I always wondered about that. Like, I thought about that, but my grandfather made friends with a black brother. His name was Pete Washington. They were like good friends, lunch buddies. How would you would call it? Sit there and have lunch together. And I thought that was really really cool that he mentioned that. Also, that like when they was, and it was mentioned earlier too, like holding the door for someone, or being kind or cordial or humanitarian. We shouldn't look at the colors of skin for that. If you're going to be kind to one person, you should be kind to all people, even though all people don't deserve it. That's understandable. And then another thing on the book too is like, you got to be down for your friends. You know, you don't leave your friends hanging, or the cats on the corner. You don't leave the cats on the corner hanging, no matter what. And that was a real. I mean, that today's reading was kind of like, ooh, I'm glad you guys chose this book too. I was like, ooh, man, this is like pretty exciting. And then they mentioned Wretched of the Earth, that he had read it 7 times prior to sharing it with Huey and stuff. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool too. Like, I guess we're on the right track. So the last point I really liked about today's reading was educating ourselves. And Huey was, I guess, well, sometimes you have to have the talk too to go with I mean, or so what if you learn all kinds of stuff within a week, but if you don't share it amongst the peoples, or put it out there, um, and apply it in your day-to-day life, no matter where you go. I mean, you can go to anywhere you go, you could do it, whatever state you're in, wherever you're at.
yeah,
But anyway,
knowledge is power.
yeah, it is. And I was like, so I'm very grateful that I'm able to share time and space with y'all and learn a little something. I know this thing's gonna die pretty soon, but it's okay. I did get to. Oh, I don't know. Were we at 3 hours almost already, or whatever?
Well, we were shooting the shit for quite a while. So as far as when we started the reading, we are roughly at about 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was
So we're
45
still
minutes to shoot
doing
this
good.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're good at that with our little pre-show therapy sessions.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It's always uplifting, and it always gives us strength to keep on like fighting. And especially when we have to deal with the public, and there's all kinds of adversaries when you're dealing with people. And like, I, I I try not to like throw all the cards out on the table until they come at you like sideways. So I'm kind of like standoffish a little bit, but at the same time, he was saying like, if you need to school somebody, you need to school somebody. And you could do that real quick if you know what you're talking about. And with
Yeah.
that being said, that's all power, comrades. And I'll stay on until until it dies.
All power.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Our
that's one of the reasons why we do these book clubs and reading groups, study groups, etc., is because there is so much knowledge here for us to learn from. And especially when it comes to writings like Fanon that helped motivate the original Panthers, and being able to read the writings of the original Panthers, because that brings true leftist ideology into modern context and makes it that much easier for us to be able to pull that into more modern context of right now and apply these concepts. It's definitely more understandable than, say, sitting down and trying to read through Marx's Capital, which is extremely long and extremely dry. Not saying that it's not worth reading too, it is, just be prepared. But you know, these ideologies have been further developed by various revolutionaries over the years, which is where we got Leninism, where we got Maoism, and now where we got Pantherism. They were building on these fundamental ideologies from previous revolutionaries and pulling it all into modern context of how do we need to apply this today and to our particular circumstances right here, right now. And it's vital for us to be able to learn from and discuss and teach each other and teach ourselves.
right.
Things are so fucking important. And
I
this
think I learned
book's
I learned the most is like I am a revolutionary.
goddamn right.
Yeah. Like this is very, very important. Like this is why we do these things, so that we know our destiny. So once again, we can hear our revolutionary ancestors' voices once
Yep.
again, so that we know what we're doing, so that we can move forward and not stay in these conditions, for too long, because we don't have to stay like this. We don't have to stay like. That's why we listen to Fred's voice. That's why we listen to Albizu Campos's voice. That's why we listen to Cha Cha's voice. That's why we listen to these people's voices, because it's a spark that needs to be ignited in us to be able to get out of this ruckus, to be able to move forward, to be able to make a new classless world where the power is in our hands equally. And about the new Africa stuff, Comrade Joe, the Republic actually does recognize that it's native land that they're, calling for. They actually do talk about that a lot. I believe in some of the main new African texts, they do truly fully recognize that it's, native land that they're on, that they're, calling for the 5 states for. That's why they expanded beyond just those 5 states and the outside territory that also makes up the Deep South. I believe with the city movement, the New Africans and Muskogee people in Atlanta, or Standing Peachtree, the homeland of the Muskogee people. I think they're planning on doing like actual negotiations, from what I know, because I'm deeply involved with the New African Independence Movement. So I believe they're trying to start negotiations with those people soon. But yes, they do truly fully recognize that this is indigenous land that they're talking about. They truly fully recognize that. And once again, they're in complete solidarity with the indigenous peoples, not only within the territory of the 5 states, but also like across Turtle Island and Abya in general. So once again, they're trying to do negotiations, I believe, soon, but we do truly fully recognize that this is native land. That's why we're trying to make it not so that, it's just a full blown, just another neo colony. You know what I'm saying? We do recognize that this is native land. And so, once again, we're trying to negotiate with them, but we're in complete solidarity with them, including our Chicano comrades, including the Chicano people, because, once again, you know, history happened to us, colonization and colonialism, happened to us. So, once again, this is not a competition. We're all in the same page. We're all trying to make a new world. It's just, where do we start? Where do we start so that doesn't happen again? So that this doesn't happen, so more people don't have to be prostitutes and slaves to capitalists, to be prostitutes and slaves to the bourgeois system. That's what we're trying to figure out. But yes, we do fully recognize that this is native land that we're talking about. So
Yeah,
just
with the land back movement, a lot of people, like especially reactionaries, who are like, "Oh my God, they just want to evict us." Well, I honestly wouldn't mind sending all the Nazis back to where they actually fucking come from. They can fuck off. But as far as anybody else, no. Land back is literally about the self-determination, the ability to be the keepers of the land, that power being put back into indigenous tribes' hands, to be able to have the ability to deny corporations the privilege to dump toxins, things like that. That's what land back really comes down to at its core, is
yeah,
that facet of self-determination of this land is indigenous land, the power to be able to control what happens to it and to be able to protect our land, protect our water, belongs in the hands of the water and land protectors, not the fucking corporation.
the people and the land, period. That's essentially what it is. The people and the land, nothing else. It's in
I
there.
don't want to cut anybody off, but I think I have like two little bars on for the battery or something. So I'm gonna have to go. But revolutionary love, comrades, and let us all stay strong. And we got so much to work on. Oh, but one of the things before I go is, unless it cuts out, is I helped build an Brown Beret Elders Council. I think we should get um, a revolution, or what you call a rainbow coalition of the elders and the Rainbow Coalition to create something while we still have them on Earth and stuff.
Yeah,
So maybe
yeah.
that's something we can think about and work on. But anyway, I'm gonna have to go because I'm gonna have to plug this thing in. But
It's
Good.
okay.
all power to the people.
All power and land back, comrades.
Land back. No, that was good. I mean, we're on good conversation because I got so much to say about it, and I work a lot with the new African. They even have a radio show. They have a YouTube channel. Everything. I usually share it.
They have a radio show. They have a YouTube channel, and they also have.
And I'm friends with a lot of them. So like this maybe we can do this in a future conversation also, or send me a message and say, hey, sometime tomorrow we could talk. We could chop it up, and or I could send you like all the people I know that from that are really working hard towards that, and I'm kind of gained a little respect with them. So and it's nice as a Chicano, as a Brown Beret, and as part of the Partido de la Raza Unida party, working with my new African comrades. It's a took some time to build some strength and unity, but besides these Rainbow Coalition study groups, I do a lot of other things too. So it's going really well, and I'm willing to share everybody that I know with you, comrades.
Of course. Share however you want to, in another time, because your phone is dying. But
Yeah.
share the people you want. Share all the people you want. We want as many people as involved. We want them to be on the same page. We want the Chicanos and the new Africans to be on the same page.
Oh yeah. And then I go on probably like 3 or 4 radio broadcastings with them during the week. So
Yeah.
it's kind of time consuming and extensive also, but it's like another whole wealth of knowledge, kind of like totally what you all are relating to right now. And like I can dig it. All right, then come.
I like your idea for having a second Rainbow Coalition Elders
Elders
Council.
Council.
That's something maybe we should sit down and discuss with Lobo and Alyssa to present to the 2RC steering committee and see what the various parties think about that one, because that would be beautiful to be able to, bring the elders together to the table with us and
It's hard.
be able
It's hard.
to, seek their wisdom.
It's very hard to do because in working with the elders, especially with the technology and everything, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to get them all at the same time because
Oh
they
yeah.
have different hours. They have, I mean, it's just very hard. And then sometimes they can't hear, they can't see, they didn't answer the phone. I mean,
Right.
so it has to be consistently followed up on, followed up on, followed up on.
And
It
act
took
accordingly with that. Yeah.
it took me like almost four months to actually get it started, and then 6 months till it was thriving. So that's just what the Brown Berets Elders Council. But man, so it's not something that's going to happen right away. But each day that we take that we didn't get on it is one day less that those elders have to live, because all our days are numbered, even though we don't know our days. But the older you get, your
Right.
your possibility
Countdown.
chances
Yeah.
you get a little lower, stuff like that, due to all this shit that we have to deal with, eat, breathe, and whatever, drink. So anyway, that's all. Let me check out, comrades, and then
Yeah,
you guys stay strong. I know we've been on for a little while, but I know it's gonna die at any second now. That's
That's
cool.
okay, comrade. This is a good point for us to be able to wrap things up for the day anyhow. We're a little over 2 hours right now. So, excellent discussion. And I can't wait to dive into the next part of this book next week. I know what's coming. I love this book. I love that you're over there doing the Cabbage Patch too.
I mean,
I like that.
that's how inspiring it is, so like it feels good.
It
That's
does.
Yeah, it feels
Yep.
good. All right. All
Readings
power,
like this light a fire under our asses. They are the motivation for us to implement these things that we
Yep.
can learn from our predecessors and be able to put into place now and
Hey,
build dual power.
today. Exactly.
All power with us.
All power and
All
free the
power.
land, free the land, free the land.
Yes.
Free the
Panther
land
love.
ever.